We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome, coaches. Coach Bo with you here, our weekly get-together, talking shop, talking baseball, talking youth coaching. In today's episode, this week's episode, I will be sharing out some of my top book recommendations that I truly believe are at the top of the reading list or at the top of the priority list in terms of reading books to be better at coaching. We're going to discuss coaching players in a way that alleviates fear, that reduces and minimizes fear so they can play the game faster, so they can play the game with confidence. There's so many benefits of reducing and minimizing fear from the mindset of players. It is huge. Playing with fear, it paralyzes players and it restricts them from ever reaching their potential, not just in one game or on one play, but for their playing career and even life. We're setting players up. We're setting these kids up to be better individuals for life. And if they go out there with the fear of everything, or they fear and they fear and they fear, that is going to reduce, limit, stall, and sometimes prevent progress. We want to avoid our players having the mindset of perfectionism, and we want them to be better. And I am going to share out some steps to being a better coach for your players so they go out there with a lot less fear, play a lot faster, with a lot more confidence, and essentially play a lot better, not just in the upcoming game, but throughout the season, throughout their career, and throughout their life. And in part one, we're going to discuss an item that I was going to bring up last week, but I didn't get to it. I did mention this, and it is my number one technology recommendation. If money is essentially no object, and I know that's not the case for most of you, but if you got some great fundraising potential, or you can get the league to kind of pitch in, or a couple teams to share, I will share out my number one recommendation for technology with you. And I was trying to slide it in last week's episode, but we got full. And once it gets full, once the episodes fill up with things that I think are a little bit more of a priority, or in this case, I don't think this is a huge priority because it's only going to affect maybe a few of you. I just wanted to get to it though, and I couldn't slide it in earlier, so it went to the back burner. And that's how we roll here at 80-20 Baseball, always prioritizing the big needle movers, the more important things first. We are definitely not prioritizing everything equally. So I'm going to hit that real quick, and then we're going to get into part two, part three. And also I got a quote for you, a great quote from one of the best leaders I think out there, one of the best mentors of leaders out there. Oh yeah, and by the way, I'm going to use in part three a video. I'm going to splice in a audio part of it. It's a video, but I'm going to splice in the audio portion from none other than Air Jordan, MJ. This guy's so good. Air Jordan was so amazing, and most of you are my age, right around my age, so you know Jordan, you know airtime, you know MJ, you know what he did on the court, you know who he was very well, and he's so good that one of the best players in all of baseball right now literally has a nickname that's cloned off of his nickname, that is using his nickname, that is copying Air Jordan's nickname, and that's Yordan Alvarez is being called Air Jordan. I mean, that's got to put you in just another stratosphere. We all know Michael Jordan's in another stratosphere, but when you have one of the best players in a professional sport like Major League Baseball, Yordan Alvarez, who's just amazing right now, and I'm sad because he was a Dodger. Not very many people remember this, but he actually got traded from the Dodgers for a pitcher named Josh Fields, a relief pitcher who pitched 117 innings with the Dodgers over the next 3 years and has been retired for 4 years. He last played in 2018. So they traded Yordan Alvarez for a pitcher whose ERA was pretty good, but he was a relief pitcher. He was 30 years old. I guess sometimes those mid-season trade deadline trades don't work all that great, but nonetheless, Yordan Alvarez is being called Air Jordan. That's how good MJ was. And I'm going to splice in a video, a very interesting video where MJ gives his thoughts on failure and fear. So we will hear that in just a little bit. Last week, if you didn't hear it, we had the top 5 coaching tweets of the month. I thought these top 5 were some of the better top 5 tweets we've had. We also talked about a surefire way to tell which coaches are true masters and how we can all get there by following their blueprint, their template. All right, part 1. This is a quick hitter right here. This is like first pitch swinging, crack, boom, first pitch of the game. We're going to get it done over the fence. I think it's a good one to just share out to get your mindset thinking about where the priorities are. And I'll tell you what, the number one and number two priorities for coaching baseball are your batters, your hitters, and your pitchers, because those happen every single pitch. Half of the game, your pitcher is pitching, and essentially half. Sometimes you're going to see more pitches. Your hitters are going to get more at-bats than the other team and vice versa. Obviously, ideally, you would have more at-bats than the other team and throw fewer pitches. But hitting and pitching are the top two priorities. So with that said, my number one tech recommendation, if money is no object to a point, and this is something that's going to cost a good sized chunk of money. So I'll give this quick. I would recommend, if money's no object, that you buy a pitching machine that's programmable and has a bulk feeder. Of course, this would be for the levels that are a little more advanced, where kids are throwing curveballs, some changeups, but typically breaking balls. The lower levels, just a pitching machine, a good pitching machine that has a bulk feeder on it that throws consistently across the plate. So you have a coach that could be throwing some batting practice. Why have that coach or a player taking the time to put the ball in one after another when that task can be automated, and then double up the productivity time if you take that coach and use him as a coach, as a pitcher, a batting practice pitcher. So now you've doubled the batting practice swings off of pitches. Of course, you can have tee and toss and things like that, but bring up the coach to go throw batting practice somewhere else on the field, in a separate spot, in the cage. I love the bulk pitching machines, the programmable ones that can throw different types of pitches. I'm a huge fan of the different types of pitches. It alternates the pitches. If you can program it, even better, because then you could get to know, like, the upcoming team throws 50% curveballs or this, or the pitcher on the starting team. You can just quickly program it 60% fastball, 40% curveball, or 50, 30, 20 if you're breaking it up over a third pitch. But at the end of the day, having a pitching machine that you can program to throw a mix that alternates, randomizes the pitches is huge. So maybe I should say it like that. A bulk pitching machine that's portable, that randomizes the pitches. And if you can program it, all the better for the more elite levels. If you have a 13, a 14, or if you're a high school, that's something you should definitely look into. Here's the huge advantage of a pitching machine out there on the field. One, it throws a lot more strikes typically than the coach. If you can get one that alternates pitches, all the better. It frees up the coach to go do and throw batting practice elsewhere and double up those reps, or hit ground balls, or coach up the hitters a little bit better. It also, because of its consistency, typically pitching machines are going to be more consistent than a adult coach throwing. Even a guy like myself who played professionally as a pitcher, the pitching machine's going to throw more strikes over time, or at least those strikes are going to be a little bit more in that hitting zone area. And if you're working on your plan A, you want hitting zone area pitches. These are the better quality pitching machines, not some of the old school ones that you didn't really know where it was going to go. I know not all pitching machines are built the same and produce the same pitches. Some are quite erratic. In fact, those would be the pitching machines you should have. You can get an old pitching machine that is a little bit more erratic. That might be the one that you use for your two-strike adjustment, or your two-strike plan 2. So you have one that's a little newer. So this is, if you have the money, you buy one that throws consistently in the hitting zone. If you can alternate between pitches, even better. So a programmable one. And then you get yourself a used one. Just find yourself a used one that's more erratic, but the erratic pitches are actually beneficial in regards to the two-strike, because the hitters need to cover a much bigger area in plan 2 with 2 strikes, of course. So that kind of works out. Those two together could be a nice complement. And lastly, let me hit this. A pitching machine that throws more pitches over the plate in the hitting zone is going to get more swings. It's going to produce inherently more balls put into play, and thus your defense. And you should have some defensive players out there, and maybe not your whole team, because I think you should allocate it differently with regards to groups and things like that. But if you can have more balls put into play, your defense, your players that are on defense, whether it's an infielder or an outfielder, they're going to inherently get more reps. So it's a win-win-win all around, and we'll leave it at that. Moving to part 2, top 5 book recommendations. Here are my top 5 book recommendations. Let me back up. These are 5 of my top 8 book recommendations. I'm going to hit the other 3 next week. These are 5 of the top 8 books I recommend to coaches at this point in time. My number 1 book, number 2 book, and number 3 book I'm hitting next week. But here is 4 through 8 on my top 8 coaching book recommendations. Number 4, Start with Why. Start with Why by Simon Sinek. Many of you have heard of this book. I highly recommend just taking the concept, the idea, the strategies, and utilizing them with your team as a coach. Start with why. Some of your players don't need the why. Most of them do. And if anything, providing the why behind what you're doing, behind what it is you're doing in practice, behind your strategies, behind why you do things as a coach, builds buy-in. And it also is a good way to self-check, to reflect on what you're doing. And if you can't give a solid why as to what you're doing, then that is your answer as to should you be doing it or coaching it that way or coaching it at all. So I think when we have to give the why, when we have to sell the players on the why, it makes us first ask ourselves, is this something we should be coaching? Is this the right way to do it? Number 5, The 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard and Dan Warren. The 1 Minute Manager is a great book. Check it out. It's a quick read, easy read, but it really gives you an idea of how to connect and how to relate, how to connect with players, build rapport, but do it in a way that's efficient but effective. The 1 Minute Manager. It's a great paradigm shifter and paradigm clarifier. Book number 6 on my top 8 list, ranked number 6, The Only Rule is It Has to Work by Ben Lindbergh. Ben, I believe, is writing for Fangraphs, works for Fangraphs. This book is a great read. It's interesting. It's a story, but it's got a lot of learning points in it. The title alone says a lot. The only rule is it has to work. I mean, that should be something we all live and move by. It's like with parenting. Hey, it's got to work. Whatever it is, whatever idea of parenting, it's got to work. Or with our coaching, it's got to work. With your business, hey, it's got to work. No theory. Does it work or does it not work? And Ben does a great job of writing a book that's a story of a team. It follows a team. It's really good. Go check it out. The Only Rule is It Has to Work. I really thought this book was enjoyable to read. The story behind it. The ending is not a climactic ending, but it is a really good story. I just want to not get your hopes up on the ending of it. It's not super climactic at the end, but the story is good throughout. It keeps you wanting to listen to it because you get connected to the story, which stories are great. They get us connected. They bring out a higher level of interest, right? For the listener, for the viewer or whatnot. So go check that book out. The Only Rule is It Has to Work by Ben Lindbergh. Number 7 on the list, The Quarterback Whisper by Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians was the coach, of course, for Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tom Brady, he's since retired. Bruce Arians was a quarterback coach for Peyton Manning, for Ben Roethlisberger, and then the head coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when they won the Super Bowl. The Quarterback Whisper. I like it because it's just really a good paradigm shaper. The coach is known for his favorite phrase or his well-known phrase, no risk it, no biscuit. And I think that message alone, that paradigm that you can get out of that you will hone by reading the book, The Quarterback Whisper, that alone will change the way you go out and coach, will change the way you go into work or run your business or go in and do your job. The Quarterback Whisper by Bruce Arians. Go check that book out. That's a good one. And the last one, number 8 on the top 8 book recommendations at this time. And I say at this time because there may be other books that come out. Now, my number 1 book recommendation overall is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That's my number 1 book recommendation overall for just people. So you could definitely use that. And I've used that book to be a better coach, but I wanted to get some books that would be a little bit more up the majority of the listeners up your alley, So I was trying to be a little bit cautious with that recommendation, but that would be the ultimate book, I think, of our time right now that will just help every part of your life more than anything, The Power of Now. With that said, let's hit book number 8 on our top 8 book recommendations for coaches, The Complete Guide to Pitching by Derek Johnson. I really like this pitching book. There's another really good one that's an old school book called Coaching from the Ground Up that was written years ago by an ex-Fresno State coach, well-known Hall of Fame Fresno State baseball coach, Bob Bennett. He wrote the book called Pitching from the Ground Up. I like the idea of the book. I think some of his stuff, his methods and modalities are outdated or not that great, but I love the idea of coaching from the ground up with pitching. That's huge because that's where you start. When I go to coach a pitcher, first thing I do is I look at his feet. I start at the feet and I work up. Most inexperienced pitching coaches start at the top, start at the arm and work down. Coaches that get better results over time are going to start at the feet and work up. That doesn't mean the problem's not up top, but they're going to start down below. They're going to start at the ground at the feet and work up from there. But the book that I think is probably the best, I think it's 90% great, but it's the best one out there. And I definitely recommend reading it. The Complete Guide to Pitching by Derek Johnson. If you want a crash course on pitching, that's a great book right there. And I think that its modalities, its methods, the strategies, the paradigm from that book can get the ball rolling with your pitching knowledge and ability to coach pitchers. It'll start getting it going. So I think that's a really, really good book. Of course, course, it's on the top 8 book recommendations. Next week, I'm going to hit book number 1, 2, and 3. And of course, my overall book number 1, Power of Now. And speaking of now for the quote of the week, the coaching quote, the coaching wisdom of the week. This one is titled Clear Guidance. This is from page 262 of Leadership Strategies and Tactics Field Manual by the one and only Jocko Willink. Speaking of Jocko, I got an email. You know who you are, coach. You emailed me, and part of the message was that it was cool. It was great to see me bring Jocko and his strategies, his methods, his mindset into the coaching world. Why not? He's a leader. He's a coach. He's a leader. He's coaches leadership. Coaching is leadership. Yet he does it at the most important level, life and death. So they have to be right. And I've talked about this at length. I want to learn from those people that have the most on the line, because then they are forced to get it right. Does it work or it doesn't work? It has to work, and they have to find out fast. They have to be very clear on what works. So why not learn from the greatest teams of all, the greatest teams of at least contemporary time, the SEAL teams? This goes into that huge competitive advantage that we're bringing here at 80/20 Baseball. The best coaching and leadership wisdom, more often than not, is not found in the baseball community. And sometimes it's not even found in the sports community, in the coaching community in terms of sports coaches, but in terms of leadership from other areas of our lives, other areas, other industries, other parts of society. A good example to show you why I think the baseball community's been holding itself back is the American Baseball Coaches Association. I've been a member, longtime member, big fan. I love the American Baseball Coaching Association's conferences. In fact, I get all the videos, so if I can't make it, I've been to 4 or 5 of them. I love going to them. It's great. For me, it's more the content and the wisdom than it is the networking. A lot of people use those as a networking thing. Well, yeah, that's cool. Networking, they have fun. It's kind of a great community. It's a really cool community, but I love the wisdom. And so I'm a big fan of watching the videos or going to the conferences when I can, definitely when they're close or local, although I've gone to the one in Orlando. I've been to the one in Chicago, but those conferences almost always have just baseball coaches or people that coach some aspect of sports that's related to baseball. I'm sorry. If I was running it, it would be 50% baseball coaches and 50% people from outside of baseball. Outside, I would have SEAL team coaches. I would have leaders of businesses. I would have coaches from outside of baseball that had no understanding of baseball in and of itself, but they knew how to coach. That's the biggest conference, the most well-known coaching conference in the country, maybe in the world, for baseball. And it's not even close to having the allotment, in my opinion, of wisdom that's out there in society brought in. Again, I absolutely love those conferences. I love going to those. I love the talks, and the wisdom is amazing, but we're leaving so much great wisdom and even better wisdom in a lot of areas. We're leaving it off the table, and I think we need to bring that in. And the good news is that's what we're doing right here. And that's a really big reason why, and one of the main reasons I started this 80/20 Baseball was to bring together all the best that I thought was out there that wasn't being utilized, wasn't being brought to coaches, and specifically to all you great, underserved, in my opinion, youth baseball coaches. So the quote, and I'll add in, instead of saying troops, like he says, Jocko, I'm going to put in players. So if your players aren't doing what you want them to do, the first person you should check is yourself. The most likely cause of this problem is unclear or misaligned guidance. Your guidance to your players needs to be simple, clear, and concise. More guidance does not necessarily make guidance clearer. In fact, more guidance, more coaching can actually make things more confusing and convoluted. End quote. That's a great one right there. And it just ties into clarity is king, clarity is queen, clarity, clarity, clarity. Simplify, simplify. Complexity stalls, crushes progress. Complexity sounds cool. It looks sophisticated. Absolutely stalls, reduces, decreases, and in the worst case scenario, blocks progress. So there you go. Quote of the week. Now sliding into part 3, coaching up our players so that they do not fear, or they have less fear of making mistakes, of making an error, of walking a hitter, of striking out, of dropping a ball, of getting picked off. Less fear. We don't want our players to go out there and be wild and out of control, but if they have fear of making a mistake, of getting out, of messing up. Fear is a thought. Fear is thinking. It's thoughts. And this goes back to the power now. It breaks all this down too. Fear is excessive thought in a lot of ways, or unneeded thought. Fear is not a bad thing, of course, right? We all, some fear keeps us alive. Fear is not a bad thing, but I truly truly believe, and I think all of you would agree, that we have way too much fear and our kids have way too much fear. I don't know. We should probably run a study on this. We could run a longitudinal study out over like 10 or 20 years and have kids list all their fears and then how many of those fears actually came to be, how many of those fears actually mattered down the road. I'm guessing it's very, very low. The fear of whatever, the fear of something that could happen is probably way more excessive, or definitely a lot more excessive than it should be. So how do we reduce that fear? I think it starts by our reaction. And a lot of times catching ourselves as coaches, catching ourselves by having a reaction that would lead players to be fearful of making a mistake. For example, I saw a Twitter video and this dad was in the stands of a baseball game, and this was some backfield game. It was a high level high school game. This game didn't really have any other spectators, just some parents. It was at a nice stadium, but it wasn't a big deal. Obviously, it wasn't anything on the line with regard to a championship or the whole team is on your shoulders right now and you got to come through. And this hitter that the dad, his son, struck out looking actually, and the dad went ballistic. And I don't know who was videotaping the dad. Like, it was almost like he knew the dad was going to have that reaction and he went ballistic. You should never have that reaction for anything in life, probably anything in life. I mean, even if somebody T-bones your car, you should probably not get as red as this guy got and as fired up. This guy was so upset that his kid struck out. The reaction tells me that there's more to that. I'm not saying that we can't be a little disappointed. Of course, you might be a little disappointed, but you have to keep that to yourself. We cannot have reactions that are excessive or sometimes even a reaction at all. And even better, maybe a more productive, positive reaction to fear and failure. It's a fine line. We don't want to promote failure. We don't want to promote it, but we don't want to fear it. We don't want to promote failure. We don't want to say, hey, it's cool. Yeah, hey, let's go up there striking out. It's cool. But we also don't want them to go up there and fear striking out. We also don't want the pitcher to be out on the mound fearing a walk or walking a hitter or throwing a ball. But we also don't want them going out there and laissez-faire, chucking the ball up there with no purpose and no command, no commitment. So having players play faster, play with more confidence, have more success starts with the reaction that we have towards failure. I believe the best way to handle this, at least early, is to not have a neutral or a non-reaction to a mistake. You don't need to react to everything, but say a player strikes out, big situation, or a pitcher walks a couple hitters, somebody on defense, one of your players makes an error. I think early on in the season, you need to have a quick little dialogue with them and with the team to reframe mistakes, to reframe errors as part of the process and say it's part of it. What's the expectation they should have for themselves, or what is the goal? The goal is not to be 100% perfect. It's not to be 100% perfect. In fact, I've recommended before showing your players at the beginning of the season or early on in the season, definitely before the first game, to set their paradigm, to reset, to recalibrate how they view mistakes. One of the best things you can do is actually show them a video, and there are multiple videos of this on YouTube, online, of the major league players, of the best players in baseball making mistakes, making errors, showing the players that are youth players, that are little league players, that are 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, any age below this high level baseball, showing them that even their favorite players, even their idols, even the players they model their game after make mistakes is very important to reset and recalibrate their perception of greatness. Greatness is not perfection. Greatness is not perfect. They're going to make mistakes. The thing is, our kids see so many highlights that are the success. Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan, somebody said, hey, you've made 50 game-winning shots in your life. And he said, yeah, and I've missed 114 game-winning shots. Some of you know that quote that I'm talking about. Those numbers are a little off. But the idea was like, he was saying, hey, yeah, you guys remember against the Jazz when I won the championship in Game 6 with Russell guarding me. Even the great players strike out. Even the great players make mistakes. And it's not, in my opinion, by showing a video like this every once in a while, is not going to promote bad skills, bad technique, bad pitching mechanics, bad fielding mechanics. But what it will do is it will recalibrate our kids' expectations, and they'll understand that failure is part of the process. And if they don't want to fail, the only way to guarantee that they don't fail is to never do anything, is to sit at home and not do anything, never taking a risk, no risk it, no biscuit. They need to be okay with making mistakes. So you can show them that even the great players, and there's videos of them, if you show these videos that have a compilation of mistakes made by the great players out there, there's a good chance that they relate to some of these players, or all of them, or some of them, or at least one of them, and they can say, oh, well, yeah, man, he's one of my favorite players, and look at his mistake. Look at the mistake he made. Look at that error he made on a basic ground ball. It resets the paradigm, and this is super important. Now, I wouldn't show it every single day. Of course, I think if show it a bunch, then yeah, you could maybe start to ingrain some, visualization of negative results, but I don't know, that might even be negligible. But at the end of the day, I think you should definitely show a video like this. You could share it with your players. Nowadays, it's easier to share stuff or just show it to them. So you set the paradigm and then your reaction to mistakes. And I think early on, there should be a discussion, a dialogue with the players or with the team. And this is what I was alluding to earlier, that emphasizes a productive response that discusses, say, hey, what did we learn from that? Failure is part of it. Hey, it's okay. You made a mistake. The important part, you were going up there working the process. Are we working the process? Are we hustling? Are we going hard? Tell them those are non-negotiables. Are they hustling? Are they being kind and a good teammate? Are they working hard? Are they focused? Those are the things that they should be really good at. Making the physical mistakes, those are something they're getting better at, but will never be perfect. Tell them we want to be perfect with our hustle. We want to be perfect with our teammates and teamwork and our team culture. We want to be very cohesive as a group. We want to be perfect with our comments and our kindness towards our teammates and support for our teammates. And we want to be perfect with our hustle. Now, this is easier said than done. The reaction part is easier said than done. You have to check your ego. You have to be okay. And you have to go to the field with the expectation that your kids aren't going to go 4 for 4. Your kid is not going to go 4 for 4. That should be your expectation. Your expectation. Now, do you tell them that? No, maybe they have. I would reframe the expectation on their part too. I would reset their mindset to more realistic. They should try to be perfect at working their hitting approach. They should try to perfect their delivery, knowing that it's not always going to be a perfect result. The pitch isn't always going to go exactly where they want. They should perfect their ready position, and they should try to perfect the knowledge of where the play should go, the ball should go, the throw should go if they're on defense. Try to perfect some of those things that are a little bit more strategy in terms of the mindset or hustle. But when it comes to the physical part of the game, the bounces, the strikeouts, the swing, sometimes it's just not always going to line up perfectly, and that's okay. But we have to check our ego as coaches, and we have to be okay with players making mistakes. We have to check that and not get upset. We have to stay in the moment, use it as a teaching tool. And as you move forward as a coach, try to find that balance between not promoting failure, but not chastising failure. We want our players to strive for excellence, but be okay with imperfectionism. Perfectionism is the antithesis of progress. Perfectionism is an absolute progress destroyer. So there are some tips right there that I believe can get you going in the right direction as a coach, working with your players so they don't run towards failure, but they don't run away from failure. And I'm going to splice in Michael Jordan talking about failure. The question the interviewer asked him about baseball and when he went out to play baseball, and that is, his batting average was like 200. Essentially, the context is, MJ, you went out to baseball, you didn't really do that great. How do you see that?
People don't see that. People will never understand that. Success, all they think about, well, you batted 202, and struck out a certain number of times. Yeah, okay. But the effort was there, and the learning curve and the passion was there that has transcended not just to me, but to other people who are afraid to do things because they're worried about the perception that may come from other places. To me, that's more gratifying than it. So that's the things that my father and my mother instilled in me. Take a negative and turn it into a positive. Don't be afraid to fail.
No reason for me to add on to that. He said it so well. Go back, listen to that part again, back up a minute or so and listen to that again. I really think that sums it up so well. And that's one of the greatest of all time, one of the most successful of all time. He's telling us that is what worked for him. And I know you could say, Coach Bo, it's anecdotal. Well, I'll tell you what, if I'm going to go anecdotal, I'm going to go MJ all day, every day, Air Jordan. I'll tell you what, it's always awesome being here with all of you. Next week, I will be sharing out with all of you a tip about catching, a catching tip that you can use with all your catchers. We are going to work next week towards getting our catchers better. And also I will share my top 3 of my top 8 coaching book recommendations. And also I'm going to splice in a really, really good video, the audio from a video that is really, really insightful that just was interviewed or recorded recently. And this is from one of the great players playing right now, one of the great baseball players right now. And he talks about about something that I think is super important. I'm going to splice that in next week. We're going to talk about that. You're going to want to hear exactly what he says. And then I'm going to share the context behind it and additional suggestions, strategies that you can use that are based directly off the wisdom that this amazing all-star, high caliber, top caliber baseball player shares with us. So I'll splice that in next week. And until then, take care of your health, take care of your family, look after your close friends, and take this information and go put it into action. Go put it into action out there on the field. Start scripting it out. If you're not coaching right now, if you're not in season and you don't have a team right now, script it out, break it down, put some steps together so you are ready to roll out there with this and put it into action. And until next week, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.
This is a quick hitter right here. This is like first pitch swinging, crack, boom, first pitch of the game. We're going to get it done over the fence, moving on. But I think it's a good one to just share out to get your mindset thinking about where the priorities are. And I'll tell you what, the number one and number two priorities for coaching baseball are your batters, your hitters, and your pitchers, because those happen